Today I'd like to tell you how we can solve education's biggest problem with 4 simple words. Before I do though, let me tell you how education's first biggest problem was solved using this same idea. For centuries, teachers had no way to create a visual representation of learning for a large group, like this one. A teacher in a class like this, if they wanted to create a visual representation, a model of learning, a skill, a concept, or even an assignment, would have to walk around the room and draw that model on every student's individual slate. That is, if they had slates. Some didn't, in which case, believe it or not, the teacher would draw on their hand. This was a problem that plagued educators for hundreds of years. It made instruction incredibly difficult, and it lasted for far too long. Now, it's unlikely you've ever heard of James Pillins, but Pillins might just be the most important man education has ever known. You see, James Pillins solved this monstrous problem of visual representation, and his solution was so simple that it's shocking that it wasn't thought of decades or even centuries sooner. But remember, simplicity is sophistication, and oftentimes the simplest solution to a problem is overlooked. So, what amazingly simple solution to the problem of visual representation did James Pillins invent? The blackboard. Simple, right? Pillins' solution to this centuries-old problem created a new visual world for students and changed everything for teachers. The blackboard is still used in classrooms around the world. Today, education has a far bigger problem than the one that James Pillins solved. And I'm not talking about standardized testing. The problem, though, does have to do with numbers. You see, educators today continue to attempt to measure learning with numbers, percentages, and letters, traditional grades. This is what assessment looked like about 100 years ago. This is what it looks like today. Not much different. And I understand this, even though it's surprising in the technological world that we're in, that we can break down class barriers with technology. It's incredible that we haven't figured this out, but I get it. See, I taught in the classroom for over 20 years, and for many of those years, I did this, because I didn't know another way. It's the way I had always done it. But I think it's sad. After a long time of assessing the old way, I knew I needed something different. I was ready to give up on education, in fact. Fortunately, my wife talked me out of it. Spouses often give us balance. I appreciate that. She told me to think things through, and I did. And I spent a summer reflecting and researching, and I said, what I need to do is connect with my students. I need to give them a voice, because this old school attempt at measuring steals that voice away from them. And I came up with something that I like to think is sophisticated, but it's really, really simple. SE2R, an abbreviation that represents 4 simple words. 4 words that create an amazing, beautiful conversation about learning. Words that give our students a voice, that give them an opportunity to revisit prior learning and to resubmit activities to continue this beautiful conversation. Like the blackboard, SE2R is really simple. Unlike the blackboard, though, SE2R comes with no production costs. We can solve this problem without costing educators a dime. Because you see, SE2R is not a thing like the blackboard. It's an idea. Let me explain. This is a typical English language arts assignment. Students like Tori here are asked to identify conflict and setting in a work of fiction. Now, in the traditional grades world, we attempt to measure the assignment before we even attempt to measure the learning. It really can't be done. We ask, what's it worth? And then we put a number on it. And the only reason we really do this is to put something on a report card at a later time. It really doesn't have too much to do with learning. The numbers, in fact, are arbitrary. The assignment could be worth 1, it could be worth 1 million. Doesn't matter. 100 works because it's easy to get a percentage, right? And then I can translate that percentage to a grade. We take these assignments and we give them to students like Tori, and if I think they get it all right, it's 100% and an A. Wonderful. If something goes wrong, if something's missed, if maybe half of it's done, well, that's easy too. 50% and an F. Why wouldn't we assess this way? It really boils down to basic math. The answer to that question is simple, and we're talking about simplicity today. Students today come to us with an array of issues outside the classroom that interfere with learning inside. Take Tori, for example. A brilliant child. In elementary school, Tori was in gifted and talented classes. She liked to create her own clothes. Pretty cool for a 12-year-old. But you see, Tori also suffers from dyslexia, an issue outside the classroom that interferes with learning inside, especially in a world that attempts to measure learning with traditional grades. Tori's dyslexia, coupled with this archaic attempt at measuring learning, contributed to her failing the 4th grade writing test in the state of Texas. She was devastated because she likes to write. She came home one day and told her mother she had been placed at the stupid table. Her way of saying, I'm put into remediation, another penalty of traditional grades. Fortunately for Tori, when she got to 6th grade, she landed in class with Laura Melson here, and Laura said, I will not attempt to measure your learning, Tori. I would much prefer to have a conversation about learning based on 4 simple words. Now, if Tori were to leave something out, remember that assignment? Let's say she only did half. Instead of penalizing her with a traditional grade and labeling her a failure, Laura, her teacher, says, let's have a conversation. I'd like to show you what I see, and I would like to invite you to be part of that. And in fact, she says, Tori, do you know the setting? Because she might. Sometimes kids just forget. Sometimes adults do. So what if she thought she was finished and she turned in the assignment instead of being punished and labeled a failure and placed at the stupid table? Laura Melson says, let's continue the conversation. Let's revisit prior learning. And then give me back your assignment, Tori, because I would like to assess all of your learning, not just half of it. Classrooms that are built on 4 simple words for assessment give us creative, enthusiastic, independent learners like Tori. I asked Laura Melson how Tori had progressed in a class where assessment is built on a conversation after her horrible experience in elementary school when she was labeled a failure by the state of Texas. Laura said, let me show you. She sent me some excerpts of Tori's writing, and this is what she did at the end of her 6th grade year. The salty stench of sweat ran across the room like we were dancing in a football locker room. These are the words of a child labeled a failure at writing by a system that attempts to measure learning with numbers, percentages, and letters. But in a class where assessment is a conversation based on 4 simple words, Tori flourishes. Her writing is as graceful as that ballerina. Victor Hugo said, there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. A classroom without measurement, without judgment, without subjectivity, a place that invites our children to be part of the most important conversation in education. The no grades classroom is an idea whose time has come. Today, we have an opportunity to revolutionize education. And we can take this idea and make it a reality. And we can do it with 4 simple words. Thank you. Thank you.